Hello Infiniteers, it is Friday, and that means it's time for a new episode of Toy Box Tutorials. Today, we are going to take a look at the Electrified Floor. And this is another one of those toys that was added to the game just before it was canceled. And you can unlock this toy in the Marvel Battlegrounds playset by completing challenge number 18 as Nick Fury. Once you unlock it, you find it here in the Gameplay Toys drawer. Now, on the surface, this seems like a very straightforward toy to use. You just place it in your environment, and I'll drop one, let's say right here. And when you step on the button in the middle, it electrifies the floor for a few seconds. And anyone who touches it gets zapped and suffers a little bit of damage. And then after a few moments, the button reactivates. So it seems pretty straightforward. But like some of the other toys that we have examined, there is more to this toy than meets the eye, because this toy also has a logic menu. And so let's drop down a few buttons that we can use to kind of experiment with this and see what it does. So the first thing you'll notice when we come in here, you can attach it to a path, so you can have this electrified floor move around. I can have it move back and forth in this empty space. I can have it move up and down or in a circle or whatever I want to do. We also have some properties. And there's two of them. There's the electric surge duration, and this is in seconds. And by default, it's 5 seconds. And what this means is when I step on that button in the middle, the electricity will run for about 5 seconds. And the range on this slider is 1 to 20 seconds. The other property is the cooldown time. This is how long it takes before the button in the middle becomes available again. Again, by default, it's 5 seconds. The minimum is 3 seconds. The maximum is 20. And we also have some logic connections, some trigger signals that it broadcasts, and some behaviors. And so let's look at the behaviors first. So we'll hook this button up first. And you'll notice there are 3 behaviors. There's activate, there's deactivate, and trigger once. Trigger once works almost identical to the button on the middle of the floor. So when you step on that button, it turned it on for that duration that you set in the properties. That's the same thing this behavior does here. So you can activate that behavior with a logic connection, not just the button in the middle of the floor. You also have 2 other properties. Activate will turn on the electricity and have it continue to run until you deactivate it. So this ignores the button in the middle. And let's hook the first button up to do that. The second one will hook up to deactivate it. And the third one will hook up to trigger once. And this will give us an opportunity to play around with this and see what we can do with it. Now this toy also broadcasts some trigger signals. It's the same 3 signals as the behaviors, basically. So when you activate it with a logic connection, it'll broadcast this signal to let other toys know this has been activated. Likewise when you deactivate it, and likewise when you trigger it once. This trigger signal will only broadcast when you select the behavior to trigger once with a logic connection. If you step on the floor in the middle, or the button in the middle of the floor, it will not broadcast this signal. And we can verify that by connecting up to our sound effect generator over here. And we'll just use the buzzer sound. Okay. So if we step on the button, no buzzer, which means it did not broadcast that trigger signal. But if we press this button to activate it with a logic connection, you'll notice activating the behavior with a logic connection, which basically does the same thing that button in the middle of the floor did. That activates the trigger signal, has this broadcast that trigger signal. The button on the floor in the middle does not. And you'll notice it followed the same properties, so it stayed on for 5 seconds, and it took 5 seconds for that button to become available again. But if you activate this with the activate behavior, you'll notice the electricity stays on, and it will stay on until we deactivate it with a logic connection. Okay? The other thing I want you to notice too is when we turn that on, you can hear the electricity running in the audio. And no matter where we are in the toy box, no matter how far we go away from that, you still hear the electricity. So if we want to activate that and just have it running all the time, we probably don't want to use a level starter to do that, because we're going to hear that everywhere. So you probably only want to turn that on when you're in close proximity to it. Alright, so let's turn that off. The other thing I want you to notice too is when we step on the middle, or the button in the middle, or we use the button over there to activate this thing, or trigger it once, the electricity shows up over top of the blue area. And you might think the corner is safe. So let's try that. Nope.
Hey, watch it.
So even on the corners, not be able to get quite where I want to get, but there we go. You can see I'm not touching the blue. So even though you don't see any electricity over this part of the floor, the entire floor is electrified. So that's important to know. Okay, so now that we kind of know how that works, what can we do with it? Well, I thought it would be kind of fun to maybe turn this into an obstacle or a little puzzle that the player has to solve. And I'm going to place 6 of these little electrified floors throughout this open area here, which is why I set this up open and sized it the way I did. And we're going to turn these all on, and the player is going to have to find a way to turn them off in order to get to this sidekick door. Alright. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this pressure plate, which I dropped down earlier. We covered these back in episode 45, but we used the Brave pressure plate that time. We'll use the Kiln one this time, and we'll use the Kiln liftable block for something to set on it. I'll drop that over here. So to turn off the floor, the player will have to climb up either side of the area here, make their way over here and grab this and drop it on the pressure plate. Okay? And we will turn on the floor when the player comes off of the conveyor. So let's set down a trigger area here that will do that. And once again, when we finish with this toy box, I want to have this so that flying characters are not allowed, because that kind of makes this toy box way too easy. The whole point is to go through the gauntlet. Alright. And then because we're using this to turn it on, we're using the pressure plate to turn it on and off. I want to use a couple of logic gates here. So let me scroll over and pick those up. And this way we won't have to make the same logic connections multiple times. We'll use one logic gate to turn it on, one logic gate to turn it off. Alright, so this one we'll use to turn it on. And on output from this gate, we'll come over to each of the pressure plates and activate them. And what this is going to do is set up a barrier for the player so that, number one, they can't just walk through this area to get to the other side, and two, they can't just walk over to that door. And again, I could fast forward through this, but since this is a tutorial series, I don't want to do that. Because I know many of you watch this series because you're trying to learn. And I don't want to skip anything and just assume that you're following me. It's always good to show exactly what I'm doing, especially in the tutorial series. Right, so that gate turned on all 6 floors. This one is going to turn off all 6 floors. So we're going to make the same connections, except we're going to deactivate. So how's everybody doing today? Have you had a chance to check out the new Disney Infinity archive project website with all of the images and things that I've been uploading? I don't know if you saw my announcement earlier this week, but I've set up a website now for phase 2 of the archive project. Because I've not just recovered videos, I've also recovered a lot of screenshots and character renders and marketing posters and all kinds of other stuff that you guys can use for your video thumbnails, your fan sites, and more. So if you haven't checked it out, you should do that. Okay, so this one turns on all 6 floors, this one turns off all 6 floors. So we're going to have the trigger area here. When it's entered by player any, turn on all the floors. So we'll input into that logic gate. Okay? And then what we want to do is have the pressure plate up here. When something is put on it, turn all of those off. So a new logic connection. When this is activated, we'll use this gate to turn everything off. And if the block gets removed from here, or the player steps on it and then steps off of it, we want to make sure that when this is deactivated, we turn that floor back on. So it's not just that the player can walk across that thing and turn it off. If they want it off and left off, they're going to have to go get that block. Okay, so there's our little puzzle. And let's go ahead and try it out. Alright, so now all of the floors are on, and they're going to stay on. And we've already seen what happens when Mickey steps on that thing, so we definitely don't want to do that. And we're going to place some enemies and things up here in a future episode, but for right now, just to make our puzzle easy to test here, over and pick this up. Be careful not to fall off the bridge. Now, if we just step on this thing, you hear the floor turned off. But if we step off, it turns back on. That's why we need the block. We gotta get close enough. There we go. And now we can walk safely around on the floor. And we can get over to this sidekick door. And again, in the future, we'll hook up a radar marker to all of those sidekick doors. But that about wraps it up for the Electrified Floor. Next time, we will examine another toy from the Marvel Battlegrounds playset that will help the player get through an intense mini-boss battle that we're going to build. Before you go, leave a comment and let me know what you think of the Electrified Floor and how I used it. I'd also love to hear what you've done with it in your own toy boxes. And if you found this tutorial helpful, please like and subscribe for more tutorials like this. Thank you for watching, and enjoy your weekend.